Welcome to 2025, our first meeting of the new year. It's Wednesday, January the 8th, 2025. On this day in history, 1815, the Battle of New Orleans took place. 1963, the Mona Lisa was on loan from the Louvre, was exhibited in Washington at the National Gallery of Art for the first time in America. And it was reported that close to 500,000 people came out to see it. In 1965, TransCanada Airlines was named Air Canada. There's your trivia for the month. Started off with that. We welcome those that have joined with us in person, as well as those that are joining with us virtually. If you're with us in person, I would ask you to ensure that your communication devices are either shut off or put on vibrate. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded for public viewing on the town's YouTube page. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for those environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. Council, if you have a pecuniary interest, I would ask you to declare it at the appropriate time. Before we begin, I would like to welcome back Councillor Mike Vasey. Mike, it's good to have you back with us again.
Actually happy to be here.
And Deputy, I want to thank you for covering for me absence the last little while. I do appreciate it.
Oh, I just loved it.
I know you did. Thank you. Well, this evening, throughout the year, I'm pleased to share with you that we welcome to our council chamber many individuals and residents who have either made or continue to make a significant contribution to our community or society in general. And tonight is no exception. Continuing that tradition, I'm very pleased to extend our heartfelt welcome to Priscilla Gagne. Priscilla was born in Granby, Quebec, and raised in Sarnia. Today, her family has made their home in Plympton-Wyoming. She is a Paralympian who competes in judo. Her rise in the sport was marked by significant achievements, including her first major international success in 2015, when she won a bronze medal at the Para-Judo World Cup in Hungary. That same year, she secured a silver at the Toronto 2015 Para-Pan American Games. In 2018, she became the first Canadian woman to win a medal in Para-Judo at the World Championship, earning a bronze. She continued her success by winning gold at the Pan American Para-Judo Championship of 2018 and 2020, and a silver at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games, where she also had the honor of being Team Canada's flag bearer for the opening ceremony. Her many achievements are certainly documented, but there are two that I will share with you. She is the first Canadian female medalist in the IBSA Championship and is now called the World Games, and just this past year was inducted into the Women's Wrestling Hall of Fame. Not only an athlete, she is also a graduate with a degree from 2 different colleges. Priscilla, on behalf of the residents of the town of Plympton-Wyoming and members of council and staff, I'd like to extend our sincere congratulations to you on your remarkable career as a Paralympian. Switching from wrestling to judo in 2010, you sought more competitive opportunities, a decision that has led you to become a leading figure in your sport. Opportunities just don't happen. You create them, and you did just that. You have achieved many significant milestones as well as recognition at all levels. But the success has not become easy. You have faced many challenges, including broken bones, hip surgery. Through it all, you have continued to be an inspiration to so many with your perseverance and your dedication. In the society we live in today, we need leaders. Leaders who have values, a strong work ethic, determination, and courage to move forward. You may not realize it. The next generation of Paralympians are watching and being inspired by you. Please continue to do what you do, and remember, we are extremely proud of you. Keep up the good work. Congratulations. At this time, I'm going to ask if you would come to the front. We're going to do some pictures. Cameras are certainly welcome if anybody would like to take a picture. Council, after we do our, and I would ask if you'd like to join with me. Take and work. For you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I look in the right way. It wouldn't be the first time I'm not.
Who got you?
Council, would you like to join with me?
Yeah.
Sophia.
With a Z, yeah.
That-
Said, yeah.
Excellent.
No, she's American, but we adopted her.
Okay.
Won't bite you.
He's friendly, stay. So sit. Close. Come close. All the way. There you go. Oh, you wanna lay down? Okay. Okay.
Here we go.
I don't know, Mike, do you guys wanna? She's really nice, I promise.
Okay.
She just looked my nephew in the face.
Priscilla, I'd like, this is Deputy.
Nice to
Mayor
meet you,
McEwen.
Deputy Mayor. Nice to meet you.
Pet your dog.
You can say hi, she's in a harness, so typically we don't let them.
She's a beauty.
Congratulations.
Councilor Bob Wolbeck.
Yeah, they're the driving force behind anything and everything.
Good, good. Is there anybody in the crowd that would like to say anything or any?
Go silly.
But yeah. That's my sister-in-law.
I sense that.
Saying less nice things when she was fighting. We're like, oh.
Yes.
Dogs.
Good.
Quite a journey. It's been wonderful watching her through all the ups and downs. There's a lot of both.
She was terrified when I first started wrestling. So then when I told her I was doing judo, she was even more.
When she was in high school, they had approached me to see if I would let her do judo. And I didn't know what to do. She was really good in wrestling. And I said, is this the one where they can make you pass out if you don't tap out or something? They said, yeah. I said, absolutely not happening.
It's my favorite way to win now. Just saying.
And there you go.
Arm blocks are fun too, but not as satisfying as a choke.
Close there, Mayor.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And we do want to thank your family for coming out this evening as well to support you. And like I said before, we are certainly very proud of you. And I think we're going to adopt you as one of them.
Aw.
Come willingly.
All right. Congratulations. Thank you. again.
Thank you again so
You're
much.
welcome. Okay, next on the agenda, 4.2, we have a delegation request from Mr. Brad Zantin on behalf of JN Ventures regarding drainage debenture. Zantin, welcome. You have, you're aware, 15 minutes, so.
I don't think I'll take that long. It'll be pretty short. As you know, my name's Brad Zanting, President J Ventures. We'll talk about the ventures very briefly in regards to the Arrow Road branch drain. This project was initiated by council plus or minus December of 2021. Passed and approved and dug by 22. And then finally had the I don't know what you call it, the final costing bill passed by this council plus or minus June 26th of 24. Which apparently that makes it no longer eligible for debentures because 2 weeks later or 2 weeks earlier, the revised debenture bylaw was passed. And staff will know if not the debenture on this particular invoice on this project. I thought it was dealt with last fall. There was conversations with your CEO. Apparently that was only tied in with the Fantasy Road to Lakeshore conversation. And when that didn't go anywhere, then it didn't go anywhere. So my only recourse was to come here and discuss it. And I guess that's what we're here to do. So if there's any questions, I'm not sure if that's a good summary.
Well, it is a summary.
Lots of history on this one.
Any questions? Mr. Rodriguez?
And sorry, I missed, thank you. You said in June 26, 24. The costs were approved.
Well, I might have the terminology incorrect and maybe this, I'm not. The costs or the drain was approved in
The assessments.
December, the final assessments, what's, maybe staff can correct me on my
So-
notes.
Whatever the terminology is, you said it was 2 weeks later that we.
Because you, and I'll assume that's correct. I didn't check in the minutes, but the new debenture bylaw has a June 12th, 2024 date on it. So 2.5 weeks.
Before, not after.
The debenture bylaw changed 2 weeks before the final, what's the final? What's the term, if I may, through,
Yeah, so it's comments?
That would be called the collection bylaw.
so had the collection bylaw been passed 3 weeks earlier before the revised debenture bylaw, it would have applied to the to the, let's call it the old rules. I just can't fathom when you have a drain installed 2 years prior that radically 2 weeks makes a difference in policy.
Anything else, or I can go have another?
Yeah, yes, please. So I don't even know who to ask. So like when we just changed the engineering review fees, like how would that apply? Because normally when you put in a new bylaw, it applies going forward, not to something that you're in the middle of. So I'm trying to figure out this one, how it.
Mr. Zanting's bylaw was passed. The collection bylaw was passed after the policy was
I
updated.
understand.
The debenture policy had been undergoing review for probably a year before that. The debenture policy in its form before it was amended on that date, 2.5 weeks before the assessment bylaw or the collection bylaw was issued, had noted that development was not eligible for grant. However, after discussions with a property owner and discussions with our lawyers, we found that our previous policy was not strong enough to support council's direction that we do not subsidize development, therefore we do not debenture fees in regards to the Drainage Act, which relate to development. So the bylaw was amended along with discussions in regards to minimum debenturing amount and debenture terms, etc. And that updated bylaw was then passed approximately 2.5 weeks before the collection bylaw that Mr. Zanting spoke to. But the previous debenture bylaw did have provisions which did discourage debenturing for development. But again, it was not strong enough and therefore it was updated accordingly.
Yes, thank you. I remember all of that. I guess my question was. Because this land. The improvement. My understanding was not for development. It was due to a petition for drainage improvements in the area. It had nothing to do with development. I remember we needed to strengthen that language. I fully supported it. And when you're in the middle of something, I guess is my question, you apply in the middle to the middle of something.
It's all about when it's officially adopted. And in regards to whether the works was done for development or by the petitioners, yes, the petitioners were the adjacent landowners. However, staff were aware of drainage challenges that arose on that property. And they would have had to been rectified prior to any development occurring on the property, whether through petition from one party or the other. There, in the report, it did summarize and identify that the works were done to accommodate the development. And because of that, in the assessment, there is a notable special provision or special assessment, which is specifically in relation to items above and beyond standard drainage. So there is a notable element of it that did accommodate the future development.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, sorry. If I may clarify, what subsidy do you grant? You made a comment about subsidy. Like the whole system on municipal drains is the user pays for them. There's no subsidy that this town pays for.
Did I say subsidy?
That's what I heard, but it's hard to hear in here, so I might be a little deaf, but I thought that's what I heard, so.
I don't recall saying subsidy. If I did, I misspoke.
You charge interest, right, on top of the debenture, so you're collecting additional revenue. No subsidy.
If I refer
Any subsidy.
venture as subsidy, that is incorrect, but however, previous council, even before the current policy had passed, did not want to act as a bank for developers and then chose not to allow developers to debenture. Even if we were collecting interest on that, we did not want to tie municipal funds up in that manner at that time. That's why the original bylaw or policy was endorsed. And then this bylaw was endorsed 2 weeks before your collection bylaw was issued to reinforce it, as we found the previous bylaw was not acting as council had intended at the time.
Councillor Bojan, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. So without getting into the weeds of the new bylaw, because it is what it is, I want to go back to kind of the timeline here, just because for this specific scenario. Would there not have been a schedule of assessment passed before the collection of fees? And if so, was that before or after we passed a new bylaw?
The schedule of assessment would have been passed at the quarter revision, which would have occurred a number of years before the collection bylaw was passed.
That's what I'm having a hard time with for this unique scenario. Have you ever seen something this, but like, I don't know how old that original debenture policy was.
It was a number of years old. It would have been in place in and around the same time as the original application came forward.
If I can help answering that, I believe this report of the quarter revision was January 12th, 2022.
You had a question, comment?
Sorry, Your Worship, I just wanted to clarify, the collection bylaw, and that is bylaw. The policy is a policy. It's getting referred to as a bylaw, and then people are talking about two different bylaws, and I want, so if we can just call it a policy then.
Yes, it's a debenture policy, which has been endorsed by council, and a collection bylaw, which is passed by bylaw.
So did the drainage works that was put in, it was put in to accommodate future development, correct?
The intent of the drainage petition was to provide drainage to the adjacent lands off of Craigmere Lee, but part of the construction incorporated elements that benefited the future development.
Future development, okay.
Anything else for you, council?
Point of clarification, if I may, that's just really was a bigger pipe put in, right? Like the pipe had to go in anyway, just put a bigger pipe in.
It was still for the use of the future development. Or it wouldn't have been as.
Somebody thought it would, I'll guarantee it wouldn't go in again today, because 5 years later, we still don't have any revenue, so it'd be kind of foolish to be supporting 5 years revenue or 5 years ago expense.
I don't know what you're talking about now, but that's okay.
Well, I can't build because you have me under appeal, right?
Well,
Anything further on this venture drainage? Council Wilden?
Well, we had all kinds of problems out there at Craigmere Crescent with drainage, right? So my understanding around that time of the drainage, it was to benefit them big time. They were in here more than once trying to get drainage out there at that crescent. Matter of fact, they were flooded out almost every time, especially in the spring, even to the point where we had to put backhoes out there, clean out the ditches along the road when they iced up because we couldn't get the drains away from there. So even though it may have benefited the development, future development, certainly benefited the residents of Craigmere Crescent out there. Right up until now, like, because there is no development taking place on that future development property. So you almost kind of, in my own mind, listening to the thing and trying to go back and memorize what happened at the time, a lot of this was instigated by the people of that area out there. I don't think the developer came in here and demanded it. It was the people out there in Craigmere Crescent that were demanding it. And so that's why it was improved and a bigger pipe put in, so on and so forth. So it's kind of iffy here. If I'm hearing it correctly, why it couldn't have been debentured.
Mr. Samansky?
So as the debenture policy is written, it's not about the lands. It's whether or not it's eligible to debenture and whether development is not able to debenture. We offered debenture to properties, or agricultural properties, residential properties, but at the time council felt that they didn't want to subsidize. So
Subsidize again.
Okay, just a
sorry,
minute.
debenture the property. So the debenturing, although the initiators of the drain were for Craigmere Lee, there is elements of the works that were done to accommodate development on the land. So where do you divide the line then?
Well, one time here, not that long ago, back in the same discussion, we didn't want to give out debentures at all. We wanted to cut them off here for a while. Remember correctly, going back there, we overruled that, said, no, we'll still give out debentures. Now, Norman and them would know a lot more about that than I do, but so we encourage debentures because it gives us more interest on money, probably more interest than we get at the bank. I think it's fairly high interest, as I recall at the time. So we're encouraging debentures, not discouraging debentures. So but I'm not sure how it all fits in with this, but well, it just, something just don't sound right to me.
Mr. Van Claveren?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think maybe where I'm a little hung up is in the wording. So we've admitted that wording wasn't quite strong enough. And so if the impression was given, or if it wasn't read into the policy, then someone might assume that it could be debenture. Now, we've since rectified that. Now it's clear moving forward. So that's probably where I'm tripping up a little bit. So I don't think it needs to be precedent setting. Because we've since dealt with it.
Mr. Bojan?
Thank you. Yeah, and just to build off of that, because again, I fully agree with the new policy. And I'm of the same thing, because I'm just going back to what Councilor Wolvett said. Let's pretend we did get rid of debentures. We made that decision. And this scenario played out exactly like this. And now all those homeowners came to us and said, well, hang on, you passed the assessments in 2022 when we could have got a debenture, and now we can't. I would personally suggest we honor the debentures because the assessments were passed prior to the policy being adopted. So although I fully agree that that new policy should be enforced moving forward, I do think this specific scenario here, that project was too far along the road. And we changed the policy, in my opinion. So in this scenario here, I don't see why we can follow the new policy when the assessments were done, the project was done, and then we change the game.
Elizabeth, do you have the old policy that it refers to? And then I know you've got the new policy, but do you have the old part that they decided to? I guess he does. No.
Am searching for it, but I don't have it right. Andy, my recollection of it was that the old policy prohibited issuing debentures for properties, and I believe the wording was where current development agreement is in place, and that's the intent by council was for any development, but the policy said for where current, development agreement was in place. So that was part of the tightening up of it, where it is now where worded that, let me read it out properly. Venture is not available for construction or improvement assessments for properties where the construction or improvement project is designed to accommodate current or future development of a property. So in my opinion, the first policy precluded development, but that's my opinion.
Further?
Okay.
Councilor Basin?
So was there an agreement in place back in 21?
No, sir.
So when the agreement come in for development, when did that come in?
The agreement has not come in yet.
So, but it's future, our old bylaw said agreement in place.
Policy.
That's all I have, I'm straight.
What did you have your hand up? Oh, okay.
If you want.
Okay, so we've heard from Mr. Zanting, heard questions from council here. This is only a presentation for his delegation. Do you want to have council or staff take another look at it and bring it back to us? Or what's your decision, or do you want to just have it status quo the way it is? Councilor Rodriguez?
Thank you. So does a motion have to come forward if we want to allow this to be debentured? And I propose a motion to allow this to be debentured based on the fact that this was already, it was all most of the way through on the old policy. And it was a petition by the neighboring community, not the developer. I think that to me is kind of a key factor.
The only little bit more of information that might be helpful to council when determining whether or not to debenture and what portion of it. Mr. Zanting's assessment in the approved assessment and schedule was I do not have the construction one in front of me. I have the one from the report. Was $38,375 total. $24,878 of that was special benefit. Elizabeth, would that 24,000 and change be directly related to improvements to development? Or could that also be in regards to works to accommodate the water from Craig Muirley?
I believe that those charges were specifically for the development for that property.
Deputy, sorry.
Well, then, I don't see anything wrong with debenturing for the agricultural lands that were being drained according to agricultural lands, but for the improvements, I don't think those, our first policy did refer to it didn't specify it properly, maybe, but it does refer to development. So I don't see why we can't at least debenture the difference. 4 and 30, like to 14,000.
Just a clarification, like the first policy or the old policy said would not debenture if there's a development agreement in place. There's not a development agreement in place today. There's not even one been authored today. I don't know how more clear it can get than that. This isn't like, there's not one there. Your staff won't do one because you're under appeal. Won't even talk about it. So.
Almost convinced me.
But Mayor Worship, rather than rushing, it's your choice, council's choice, but rather than rushing this, and I'm struggling on the wording of what part and people have questions. I wonder if it's just that staff be directed to bring that breakdown. So we know exactly.
There seems to be less concern about the breakdown. There seems, if I'm interpreting council correctly, and you obviously can correct me if I'm not. It seems to be more concern in regards to whether we're enforcing this through the previous policy. Which some, in Mr. Zanton's opinion, this would allow to be debentured. Staff's defense to that is that the policy was always developed to discourage debenturing development. However, on a number of development lands that it was not strong enough to do so, and it was legally challenged. So I don't know if breaking it down then really gets to the crutch of the problem, if the crutch is when everything occurred. So I don't think it's probably worth coming back. I think if council would like to see this property debentured, as it has done with a few other development properties who came in prior to the updated policy being approved, then the motion tonight would be suffice to do so.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez moved that motion. I'm assuming would like the second option that Adam talked about, not the breakdown, but to waive it for was it specifically for a property and we're gonna get a property address, or do you want me to put
I can give
the
you-
investment amount or a roll number? I just want something to be clear rather than just be waived for the Arrow Road.
And
That
I,
was you.
yes, and I, obviously you don't write down justifications for that motion. So yes.
Yeah, if you want.
Well, the justification was the schedule assessments were done 2 years prior. This was started and practically finished under an old policy, and that's basically the justification. And it was a neighboring petition.
Just a question, was there any, and I'll use the word subsidy, was there any subsidized agriculture money given to this project, the 1/3 subsidy that agriculture gets? Was there any of that applied to this drainage?
Yes.
And would that have been applied to any part of Mr. Brad's property, or just the Gregmere Lee residence?
The Craigmere, excuse me, the Craigmere Lee residents wouldn't be eligible for grant, but this particular property was eligible for grant. I do not believe we have received the grant from Amafris, so that could change depending on Amafris determination, but it was put in as if it was, so there is a grantable portion.
Will kick in, okay.
That portion would typically be for the non-special benefit though.
That is correct. I can
Okay.
give you numbers if council wants, but.
Yes. Madam Clerk, do you want the roll number off of my screen?
Please.
What would ministry's point of view be for getting the subsidy? I mean, it's like, would do they realize that some of this is going to be developed or has been changed for development? I'm not sure. I just wondered if, if we go ahead and debenture and they'd come back and say it doesn't deserve any subsidy because it's going for future development. Oh, well, I'll just think out loud for a while.
You're in type to.
Yes.
So what Adam provided me with the schedule assessment is that August 16th, 2021. The most current one, I'm including in here
January 12th, 22.
okay, so I must be looking at.
I think you just want to use the roll number and just note that for the Earl Road branch drain, that rule number such and such may.
Permitted to measure their assessments of on the aerial road branch drain. You
Yes.
guys are comfortable?
That's enough direction to let us know
Okay.
what we're talking about.
Okay, so Councilor Rodriguez has moved that. You need a second, your worship.
There a seconder for that? Councilor Wabet? You okay if the clerk writes your name in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilor Rodriguez, second by Councilor Wabet, that roll number 3835-340-020-037-700 be permitted to debenture their assessment on the Arrow Road Branch drain. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Let's go to item 5 on the agenda. First of all, I'd like to direct your attention to item 5.1. And clerk, I would ask you to give us an update on that, please.
Sure, at the last council meeting. Or second last, we discussed, or staff brought forward some more information on the false alarm bylaw. Council had some more questions, so we asked for the OPP to attend and be able to provide clarification for that. But in order for us to discuss that, we need a motion of reconsideration because the original motion about the false alarm bylaw was defeated by council. So I have a motion here to reconsider that if there's a mover and seconder. And discuss.
Right, thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for this. Mr. Vacy, Deputy Mayor. Okay, if the clerk writes your name in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Read that one and then we will.
We have a motion by Councilor Vacy, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen, that motion 11 from the November 27th, 24 regular council meeting be reconsidered. All those in favor? Okay, I need to see those hands up again, please. Carried.
So this is your original motion, your worship, if you can read that and then our guest.
All right, motion by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Van Clavin, that report by Aaron Kwarchuk, clerk, dated November the 20th, 2024, regarding the OPP false alarm be received in the bylaw 140 of 2024 be approved, taken as having been read 3 times and finally passed. And the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. So this evening, we have Inspector Chris Avery and Mr. Greg Nemchuk, the chair of the Lambton Police Board, with us this evening. Inspector Avery and Nemchuk, welcome. I'm not sure who would like to take lead on this presentation, Inspector, but I know council has some questions for you. Would you like to do your presentation first and then go for questions? Do questions first, Inspector.
We can do questions first. How would we get to the relevant information that interests council?
Right. Councilor
Just
Vacy.
a point of order, was I at that meeting?
No idea.
It's the 27th.
Usually Mike, you were.
I remember talking about it, but
No,
the actual
actually,
passing, I probably was not here.
no, you're
I
correct.
was just looking at the date.
So we-
Thank you.
Yes.
Who was on the netty? I mean, Councilor Van Clavin, you okay? But
Yes.
Yeah, we're good. Thanks, Mike.
okay, who's got questions for Inspector? Councilor Bojan.
Thanks, Inspector Avery. I just have a question from the last time, and then even with the new information, I'm just still curious. Do we have any idea? So I know we had a total number of false alarms for Plympton-Wyoming. Do you have any idea how many of those were repetitive false alarms that would fall under this bylaw? So for example, if I can't remember what the number it was for how many there were, was it 47? So do we know how many of those were repetitive and eligible for a fine if we pass this? Or if it was mostly commercial system malfunctions or anything like that? Do we have any data like that?
I do. I have all of that. Actually, I have all the false alarms from the last 4 years. So I can give you a total. Your total is incorrect. I don't break them up with 47. That's
I'm not sure that's.
You've got the accurate.
I do. So for 2021, 22, 23, and 24, you had a grand total of 231 false alarms. I do know who the top, well, I have them in numerical order, so I do know who the top hesitate to use the word offenders, who the top alarms are. And generally they're commercial. And so you've remained fairly consistent. There was 54 false alarms in 2021, 54 in 2022, 55 in 23, and then 68 in 2024. So it's 231 total over those years, but it's definitely more than 47, but it's not an astronomical number.
Sorry if I may.
Mhm.
The 47 was from a report, I believe we were given at our last thing, from covering from January till, I believe, September in Plympton, Wyoming only. That's what that 47 number we were given originally.
Okay. Would that come out of the police service board report? Is that
Correct. Yeah, the newsletters.
okay?
Yeah, so we only had we didn't have the data for the end of 2024 yet, so it was only the first 3.
Yeah,
Okay, well, maybe that's it because it was only not quite to the end of the quarter. And I have the stuff from the previous years, so if that's helpful.
So can I clarify? The
correct.
231 is 4 years, only Plympton, Wyoming.
Only Plympton, Wyoming. Yes.
Councilor Bojan, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. It answers, I guess, without going into details of the repeat offenders, are we talking 4 per year? 3 per year, 3 per year?
So the top offender or the top alarm person is 15 for 2024, 7 for 2023, 4 for 2022. And for those 3 years, that that facility is the leader for those 3 years.
Inspector.
So some of what we find is that there are people that don't necessarily get their alarms repaired. And by having this bylaw, it may cause people to get their alarms repaired so that there's less false reports requiring police attendance.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Councilor Baines, anything from you?
Not at this time.
Councilor Rodriguez?
yes. So my question last meeting was, like, I went through I believe we got a report from our CAO at near the end of December, a police services report. I think it gave the year-end numbers and how you break down the billing for each jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction pays. So it was combined services, but then the modeling is per population size, I believe, is how we pay.
I don't have billing information with me tonight.
Yeah. That's how the funding modeling is, I think. So I was trying to understand how many hours are put into Plympton, Wyoming for the fees that we pay. So I was trying to understand that. Because some of the justification, and obviously you want these people to fix their alarms, I get it. But I'm just trying to understand. In the report that was presented to us, it was alluding to that you're taking away from other calls. And I'm just trying to understand how much time is being spent in Plympton, Wyoming for the amount of money we're providing for OPP services.
So I don't know, I can answer that question specifically. There's a base costing. And then there's a costing that I would have to get somebody from our municipal policing bureau to answer. Because there's a weighted cost for specific calls. And I'm not sure how that works, but there would be specific hours allotted for each specific call. So as far as the resources that that might be taken away from other calls, if we have someone, for instance, going to Kamlaki for a false alarm when there's a crash somewhere in the other end of the township, but we have a couple of cars going to that and it's really a nothing call, it would be better if those units maybe were available and more timely in the response to a different crash. I think that's, if I understand your question right, I think that's where I'm at.
I guess I'm just having a hard time with that scenario because you don't even know where these police cars are stationed, really, because they're all over the jurisdiction, right? So it's hard to understand. Do you have 5 police cars allotted to Plympton, Wyoming at all times? That's what I'm trying to understand, because it's shared services. And calls are triaged, I would assume. You're not going to race to a false alarm and they're gonna turn around on that false alarm and look at a car crash. Not gonna-
Well, how do we know it's a false alarm until we get there? It's an
Yes.
alarm, and if it's your alarm, it's your house and you've got an intruder, you wouldn't want us to assume it's false alarm and not go.
Correct, and that was kind of one of my other concerns is you don't even know you're having a false alarm until you get there. And so we don't want to discourage necessarily the fear of calling the police when we don't even know if it's real, fearing that we might get some enormous bill, $250. The first one, obviously, you don't want somebody getting to 4, 7, or 15, that's ridiculous. I agree. But it's that creates that perception of. And then you take away that safety factor from the public.
So
So
we,
that's kind of where I'm. Having a hard time, because you don't know it's false.
so let's be clear, if you call, we're gonna send cars, absolutely. There's not gonna be an instance where we do not go,
I get it.
for sure. And as far as calls being triaged, I suppose a barking dog takes a lot less precedence over a crash or an alarm. In that instance, there would be a triaging of calls, for sure. I'm not really keen on talking about resources and how many cars I have deployed to what area or where they're at. I don't think that's a safety issue. So, but yes, we do have shared services. Zones have cars assigned, and if those cars need help and other zone cars are available, they may come and help, for sure.
And I guess more my point was is I don't want to discourage people from asking for police. They know there's some sort of penalty that would go with it, is what I'm saying, because to your point, people don't know if they're having a problem or not 9 times out of 10. And we don't want to, I don't want to discourage that.
So I'm not much of an alarm guy, but I am told by another municipality that they had an offender that had numbers similar to what, or not, I hesitate to use that word offender, but persons that were having alarms in the neighbor of your top alarm person. And when they got their first fine, they had their alarm repaired. I don't think that people will be discouraged from calling because I think most alarms are automatic. And if there's an issue, it will help them sort it out. And we're happy to go. It was something that was raised by other municipal partners that this might be an offset to prevent additional billing on a call for service that doesn't need to be generated if people would just get their alarms fixed or make sure they're in working order. But it's I think your clerk referred to it as the OPP bylaw, not my bylaw. I'm fine with going and responding to whatever calls, but every time there's a call generated, and I don't have that information with me, it adds additional cost to the overall policing bill.
Well, it only adds calls if it's false, but you don't, again, you don't know that till you get there. But I do want to say alarms are not automatic. Sending police to that statement in the industry. That it doesn't quite happen that way. Just so you know.
I'm not an alarm guy, but I will tell you that every time there is a call, there's a call generated. It adds the cost for the bylaw would be generated by the municipality. I was talking about the overall policing bill. It doesn't matter whether it's a false alarm or not, it's an alarm and it generates a response. So in order to not have unnecessary responses or to respond to something that is not actually should not have been a call when it could have been prevented. But you don't hear me say that the OPP won't go help out in will respond to any call for service. It's up to the municipality whether or not you're happy to have us respond in this instance.
Councillor Vacy, before I go to this side of the room.
Thank you. You kind of stole my thunder on the commercial part of it, that if it's a motion sensor going off, whether it goes to a call center, somebody's calling you in. you don't know what that's costing us, so.
I don't,
That call,
I don't know what that costs.
it's under $250. We can
I,
recoup the cost.
I don't know what it costs, so I don't know what to tell you.
That's all so this is basically getting our money back. You can see why it would. And screwing you guys. What's 50 calls a year that we're paying for that totally preventable?
Okay, this side of the room, Deputy
I don't have any questions.
Van Cleven,
My question has been answered, sir. Thank you.
Councilor Wolbett.
I have a lot more concerns and I got questions. I don't think any alarm is false. I think that's a bad word to use because you don't know. You don't, and you've stated that pretty clear here tonight. You don't know they're false until you get there. And no different with our fire department, stuff like that. We get calls. I mean, we can't, we don't know if they're false or they're not false. And we get there. It's false. I know a situation at our own church here, they were getting false alarms. And they kind of narrowed it down. It was every time the furnace kicked on, it'd blow the curtain and the motion sensor would pick it up because somebody didn't tie the curtain up on Sunday morning after the church. But then another time we did have a real fire there on their stove with maple syrup and that was a real alarm. So everybody thought, as a matter of fact, nobody even got up and moved, sat during church service and everybody thought, oh, it's one of these false alarms, you know, but I think we're playing with fire here and safety if we start to muck around and even make our staff deal with this whole false alarm thing in the office here. I think it's better left with you guys. And I personally, I think if I was having several false alarms and an officer come to see me, I think he'd be telling me pretty quick, you better get a hold of your company and get that thing fixed up. You know, because obviously the thing's not accurate. And if you really do have something going on here, you know, that's what you got an alarm system for. I just don't think the municipality should get involved. I don't think the police board should have got involved with it. With my experience, I was on the police service board. I chaired it for 6 years. And I dealt with this years ago, these false alarms, mainly in the big cities. They get hundreds of them, like hundreds and hundreds of the stupid things, you know. But they come up with ways to deal with it by talking to them. And I just don't think it's for us to deal with. I just don't. And I like your position. You're going to that. Not a false alarm. Please go. That's all. It's just a speech. I don't know what the answer to all this is, but I just don't think we should be involved with it. I think it's you fellas' hands. We're paying anyways. The officers are out there and you want to call to an alarm. He's on shift. Maybe he was in that area touring anyway. So to put a price on it, gotta be awful difficult. I don't think. That's my spiel.
Thanks, Counselor. And then I'll go to Counselor Basie.
I just wanted to be clear, your worship. It's not an alarm bylaw. It's a false alarm. So it's only once it's determined false. It's gonna come into our hands. So we're not gonna charge for alarms going off, right? So that's why it's the false alarm. And then the other thing is we have it labeled OPC because we don't want to have people confused that it's fire. So there's a big difference there. So I know it's not your wheelhouse. And also, they're gonna go, as we've said many times, and we're gonna pay the bill for it. This bylaw is just for an opportunity for us to recoup costs and deter unrepaired alarms or whatever the reason is, as a deterrent. So 23 calls in a year could be avoided. That's a lot of staff time that could be reallotted. But I just wanted to clarify those because we couldn't call it an alarm bylaw because you're not getting charged for an alarm once it's deemed false, right?
Counselor Basie?
Yeah, thank you, your worship. Kind of the point I was gonna make, that they've already responded to the call. They've already determined it's false and they're billing us. So some guy 15 times, if it's $100 a call, it's costing us to get his damn alarm fixed. They're not gonna stand there and wait for the guy to show up. They're gonna say it's false alarm and they're off they go to the next call to advise the guy you should get your alarm fixed. It's some guy that lives who knows where. We ran into this when I was on fire. We should have it for fire as well. They put a new alarm in at the high school years near you and I would have been there. And we went every night for like 3 weeks. At 2:30 in the morning, the damn alarm would go off. Until we find them, the alarm stopped. But it doesn't cost them nothing, but it costs the municipality every time we rolled out of the hall, that if you do have a guy, his fire alarm's going off, and it's 15 times, we should have some kind of recourse to collect our money back. Because what happens is exactly what Bob said. The last one is a fire. And nobody responds to it. Because they're all 2 in the morning where, no, that's such and such, I'm not going. So I think this is a good idea. It at least gives us some kind of recourse to go back and get some money. We're not. The alarms are still gonna come in, they're still gonna respond. We just have an avenue to get some of our money back. They're not gonna not go. That's the point. Not a false alarm till, like say, after it's done, you're going home.
That would be a different principal at the high school at that time, Mr. Nemchuk.
Yes, it was way before you. I'd hate to think who it was.
Counselor Rodriguez.
Thank you. So, I just want to say, first of all, I find it interesting that you don't do billing where, many police jurisdictions do their own billing. So I'm not understanding why the OPP does not do their own billing for a false alarm. They have their own false alarm programs in place. And they bill directly. So I'm just not understanding why the OPP province-wide really hasn't adopted a policy and administers it. Because normally that is, I've never seen one handled like this. And secondly, you're on the police service board that came up with this bylaw. So I'm just wondering, did you look at other police services to see what type of bylaws they use? Because I've never seen one this go to such extremes and expense as this one, instead of trying to narrow it down to nip it in the butt quicker.
So if I could, we looked at this the police board has looked at this data for well over a year. Discussed this before we come up with what we're trying to think of doing. The whole point is again, to deter these false alarms, to have people fix their equipment so that we don't have our police services going out when they could be using, for different reasons, right? Is it in line with other police boards? I'm not 100% sure. You're saying no, I don't have that data with me, but I can say to you that when it came out for the first with the police board talking about false alarms, we said, let's take 6 months. Let's take more than that to look at the data. And then we looked at that data and said, yeah, we have to do something because of what the numbers were and how our police services are responding to this and possibly not responding to another situation. So that's where it came from. Did we look at other police services boards data?
Their programs, yeah. Like, so for instance, in London, they got away from all of this. They used to do this type of scenario where you could have false alarms a year, and then they would have you actually had to get provide a letter from the alarm company to show that you maybe repaired your system and then you could be stated. That encouraged actually stopping all this. Then they just actually got away from going altogether and went to zone verification, where you had to have 2 different zones actually trip or a visual verification and then the response. So then there was none of this administration happened. They put a policy in place. That's how we'll do with it. So, I mean, to me, they've been there, done this for years. And they know what works and doesn't work. And of course, the liability side of it, when you suspend somebody's service for not taking action, they get adopted and grew into better ways. I just feel like this is kind of like 10 steps backwards to what you maybe could be doing to really curtail more.
Some of the things you're saying there, I have concerns about with regards to, we're not looking at suspending service whatsoever. We would never, OPP would never do that, suspend the service. And looking at a 2-tiered where two items have to go off in a place before they would respond, that's a concern of mine. They're going to respond. line is, let's fix our equipment, let's do whatever. I like the idea of saying you get a letter or whatever. We can look at that. I like that idea.
Yeah.
We would still respond as long as there's an alarm call received to us, we would respond. So I don't think we would, I've never seen where we would suspend service if we received a call.
I'm sorry, I thought I-
You can't go. If you've had two calls, you mentioned London City, if I understood you correctly, that after two calls, unless you had that letter, they would not respond. We would always respond.
Yes, that's how they dealt with it years ago. They have changed it now. But to speak to the point of getting it nipped in the butt quicker, it was getting that letter to show that.
Yeah,
To speak to fire, in the fire, Mr. Vasey had mentioned it, people don't have an option of being able to stop fire. Under the fire regulations, they have to respond. So the control is out of the individual, whether the fire truck goes or not, to speak to that. But again, they can issue, notices to say, provide some sort of proof that you've made repairs to your system, as Mr. Woolwick can speak to.
Counselor Basin, then we're gonna wrap
The
this up.
expense- Sorry, the expenses already occurred to us. When that fire truck rolls out of the hall, that costs us money, whether that's a false alarm or not.
Mhm.
What they're saying is they do have a billing system. They bill us. What they're suggesting is you guys should maybe go get your money back and we keep your police costs down. But right now we bitch and complain how much it costs us for policing. They're giving us, here's a little bit of revenue you can get and save them some time. And we're thinking, well, no, nobody's gonna call an alarm in. Well, it's a false alarm. There's 15 of them in one company this year. Or last year, sorry.
Mhm.
Once a month, they go to this commercial building,
I get it.
knowing it's a false alarm or assuming it's a false alarm. They bill us for it and we just let it go. So that's what they're trying to say across the county is if all you guys were starting billing that, it would save us some money and we all end up saving money. If the guy gets his alarm fixed, brings us a letter and says it's fixed. Okay, well, good. We'll start over again.
Okay, council, we've had some good discussion on this. I have a motion on the floor moved by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Van Claveren. Report by Aaron Kwarchuk, clerk dated November the 20th, 2024 regarding the false alarm be received and bylaw 140 of 2024 be approved, taken as having been read 3 times, finally passed. Aaron Clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Inspector and Mr. Nemchek, thank you very much for your time this evening. Appreciate you coming.
very much. Thank you.
Gentlemen. Ellen Ann would be so proud.
Okay, let's go to item 5.2. I have a motion by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Van Claveren. Signature is almost as Councilor. Report by Aaron Kwarchuk, clerk, dated November the 20th, 2024, regarding the annual arena user fee agreement with the town of Plympton-Wyoming. Greenwood Recreation Center be received, approved, and that bylaw 142 of 2024 facilitate the agreement be taken as having been read 3 times, finally passed. The mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Chance to review that agreement. Clerk had done. Is there any questions for the clerk? Councilor Vasey?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Going through this, as you know, last couple of years, and it drives me a little crazy. Right now, we pay $100 per person to Troya for arena access. According to their numbers, I would ask why St. Clair pays nothing and same with Brook Elvingston. They write off $5,400 and they don't explain where that goes. In their letter, I do take bit of offense to the reference that the non-paying verbal and written agreements that we have with other departments, i.e. the fire department and our ball association and whatnot, could be in jeopardy over this $10,000. I go back to my old argument. We have beaches, lake accesses, boat ramps, volleyball courts, etc., would get used by all our surrounding neighbors that cost us a fortune. We're looking at a $40,000 dredging cost for the boat ramp. Last year, we made $10,000. We know our neighbors, oh, hold on. We know the lights at Canton Park need to be replaced. Life expectancy of them have come to the end. That's approximately $175,000 replacement. Where will that money come from? Parks and Rec will never pay for itself. It's a luxury and benefit the residents of each municipality receive. Currently, we're paying $10,000 for 100 kids to use the arena. Last year, over 150 Petrolia kids were registered with Wyoming Minor Ball. Yes, ball gets a break at the Diamonds in Petrolia, but not to the tune of $10,000. And in my opinion, the Diamonds in Petrolia should be coming to the Wyoming Baseball Association for free. Seeing that we don't charge for them, 150 of their kids come over and use our fields at no cost. I guess what's bugging me is missing info that is not provided in this report, that the financial impact does the arena bring to the town of Petrolia. Ask anyone who walks into the arena with a large double-double, or the parents that drop the kids off for practice and go to the grocery store shopping. By their own numbers, 50% of the kids are out-of-towners. So at least twice a week, half of their kids are coming in for practice and the parents are going to spend their money. Not to mention the teams from out of town who come to play. Try to go get a beer at Black Gold on a Saturday afternoon and see how many hockey people are in there spending their money. I see no reason to spend, I have 20,000 because it's the same argument for the next one, of our tax dollars money to another town's Parks and Rec when our very own Parks and Rec department, which is inundated with requests for improvements, is stretched to the limit. We can use the money ourselves. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'm going to make a comment. I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Vasey said. I might add too that poor little Watford over there are not getting any support from us. And we seem very beholden to Petrolia and Forest. And I know there are a number of families going to Watford that just on that principle alone, it just seems in good form to supplement them also.
Want to add another 10 then to what?
Well, maybe. Maybe fit.
That's what it sort of sounded like.
Well, it does. I meant it to sound sort of like that. Yeah.
Well, this motion is dealing with the Troy.
Fair enough.
Councillor Bojan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just make a comment too on the whole formal agreement part. What ended up being formulated wasn't exactly what I anticipated. More specifically, I don't know why we would move from a system that's basically just friendly neighbor to a contractual automatic increase tied to CPI. That looks like something we would sign with our maintenance operators for the water system, not an arrangement like this. And I know I'm guilty of referencing having some sort of more formal agreement in the past. But for me, that was because I wanted kind of the opposite of what this agreement looks like. I wanted to see concrete data that we want to have to make the decision to make a donation or how much we're going to donate. We can identify when we notify Petrolia about how much we're looking at so that they can at least have some sort of understanding for their budgeting. But I certainly didn't anticipate an escalation clause for annual payments tied to something that's completely unrelated to enrollment numbers, which I think is the main thing here. So my initial preference was going to be scaling down this agreement so that it was kind of more bare bones of we just want to know how many kids are enrolled every year so we can help make a informed decision. And I've even gone beyond that now, because now there's recent discussion about a new arena and a county-wide funding model. So now that that discussion's happening, I don't think I'm in a spot where I can agree with any new agreement until we know what's going on with that. And we just keep status quo, and at budget time, we talk about our donation requests. Because I don't, now that there's discussions about a new arena and we're all gonna pay for it, I think it would be crazy to sign an agreement without knowing where that lands. So that's just kind of my opinion on that, because I know I talked about an agreement in previous, but I mean, it wasn't an agreement to push into a CPI inflation escalation clause. It was to say, where's the money going and how many kids are enrolled, rather than just a handshake deal. So it's not exactly what I anticipated. And I certainly would be able to support it when it comes to the escalation clauses. And then now that there's arenas being talked about, I think it's just status quo for now, in my opinion.
Counselor, if I can comment on your discussion about the new arena, there's been nothing officially, to my knowledge, that's been talked about. There's a lot of coffee shop gossip on it.
I'm just referencing the quotes in the newspaper articles.
I won't comment on that.
Can I ask,
Sorry, Heather.
Mr. Bouchin, did you mean status quo, just keep on paying the 10,000 without an agreement? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, status quo being in our January, whatever it is, meeting. It's in front of us and we pass it or don't pass it.
Okay. Then just forget about the agreement.
Counselor Rodriguez.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Councilman Bush, and I don't agree with the inflationary increases. We don't, I believe they do their arenas and who's supposed to go to what arena for hockey based on, they have some sort of boundary line for that. We don't have one. That's the only one for all this area, or for some of this area, and so is Forest. And Forest, I believe, has it worked out with Watford, because sometimes the kids do practice in Watford, sometimes in Forest, so whatever agreement they've got between them, and then there's Thetford. And then Graham Ben's talking about a new arena as well. Because there's just, both these arenas are at capacity. So they're obviously well used. They're used not just for hockey, but for other stuff. But if new arenas were going to go into the picture, I believe when the Forest one was built, we all paid $25 twice a year for 5 years towards that project. So that would be separate from, I believe, this anyway. So again, yeah, I believe status quo is probably we're going to propose it in the budget. Am I talking too much for you?
Yeah,
Well,
actually.
I appreciate that little
All right.
puff and puff there.
All right, that's enough.
No, it's not.
It is.
Yeah, it is enough. It shouldn't happen.
Any
I
other
don't find
questions
it
over
funny.
here?
I find it disrespectful.
All right. What?
Your worship, staying status quo be, I believe, council defeating the motion to approve the agreement. There was a previous motion that directed staff to prepare a formal agreement, so I think it needs to be considered. We can't just leave the motion on the table. You
We have to defeat it.
consider approve or defeat it. If you defeat it, then it would revert back to status quo.
We cannot defer it,
You could if you wanted more information.
but I think we have enough.
Yeah, if someone felt they needed more information, you could do it.
In regards to the number of users, Petrolia gave us all the information they had. That was part of the initial discussion. They weren't able to collect further information in that regards. They developed the agreement based on those discussions and brought it forward. So yes, I believe the clerk's opinion is the best way to go. If council would prefer to leave it informal and have the discussions each year at budget and carry on as is.
All right, you've heard the motion, council. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated.
So I will continue to work with Lambton Shores moving forward to bring forth a formal agreement with them. Their funding model is very different from Petrolia. The money we grant them does not go to Lambton Shores' operations. It is held and then distributed to the user groups who have members from Plympton-Wyoming that are part of them. So we'll be working with them to formalize that agreement, hearing some of the comments about formal but not too formal agreement. We will take that into consideration while developing the next agreement.
Mr. Van Claver.
Clarify one little thing, is this for the calendar year 2024 or the calendar year 2025? And then when would we be able to discuss it again, whether we still wanted to even move forward with the following year's contribution?
Think by defeating the motion. If that's a clerk question, Aaron, if we wanted to consider an agreement again in the future, it would have to be a very much different agreement, wouldn't it now, since we defeated the motion based on this agreement?
Correct.
Unless we
Different
had a
motion.
reconsideration.
Let's get a motion of reconsideration, but discussing it in budget consideration, it's included in the budget, I believe. That's a different conversation. You're just talking about that grant. You're not talking about a formal agreement.
Yes, fair enough. Great, super. Thank you.
All right. We council, let's go to item 6.1. I have a motion by Councillor Wolvett, seconded by Councillor Van Claver, that the minutes be adopted by council and those confidential minutes. The closed sessions of council remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Regular council meeting minutes of December the 11th, 2024. Closed regular council meeting minutes of December 11th, 2024. Our planning council meeting minutes, December 16th, 2024, and our closed planning council meeting minutes of December 16th, 2024. You've had an opportunity to review them. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, let's go to item 6.2. There's nothing on that, is there?
There's no motion, but there's no item.
Okay, 6.3. Council reports, deputy.
Yes, sir. You'll notice there's a couple of pictures in our agenda that includes the Afghanistan-based drumhead that was donated by the Sarnia Legion to the Plympton-Wyoming Museum. Like, the museum people were very pleased to accept this drumhead, and it's quite a thing. So just think it was very interesting and important to put it in our agenda. And also, I think today your 75th birthday, and so I just wanted.
Not quite 75.
Oh, it isn't?
No.
I have a wrong number. What is it? 74 then? Or you're not? It's later tonight that you were born, or what?
No, what about now?
Okay, and I can't think of a better birthday present that you've received, and you've had some health issues, and you are now currently cancer-free. So I think that's a great birthday present.
That's about one of the best you could ever get.
No kidding, yeah. So, and while we're talking about health, we're glad to see you back, Mike. You had some big health issues too, so I think that's all I have. So, Mr. Wolvat, do you have anything?
Well, in 1935, there was another fella born, and his name was Elvis Presley on this day, 1935. So, Gary. We had a Lambton Farm Safety meeting last night over at Krabby Joe's in Betroy to set up our plans for the next 6 months anyways. So including the Kids Safety Day, we haven't picked a spot yet for it, but we're gonna add a couple of different places. I won't mention it because nothing's final. And they'll be having their annual meeting, I believe, on the 6th of February. So the mayor will be getting an invitation to the annual meeting. Anybody else can go if they want to pay $25 and come and listen to farmers say a few words. Other than that, Happy New Year to everybody, and just getting started.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Van Clever.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not a ton to report other than we've been pretty busy on the drainage committee. We had a number of meetings just prior to Christmas with landowners abutting the McFarland Drain in Kamlaki. And we even had a chance to walk a portion with the United Church representatives. And then this morning, we walked a portion of the Falconer Ramsey Drain reconstruction at the farm. Bill McKinley on Aberarder Line, and it almost blew our mind, didn't it, Elizabeth? That wind was it's cold, but it was a neat visit there. That's all I have to
You
report.
couldn't
Thank you.
pick a better day?
You'd think, but then next week there's something else,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
okay, right, thank you. Mr. Belgian.
Thank you. Not a whole lot to report on. I just want to make a comment to all those involved with Christmas in the Village. That event, of course, took place in December. And it truly takes a village for that one. There's a lot of community groups involved with that event. So I just want to say thanks to all those volunteers who helped put it together. And then I also will note that the events committee met on Monday just to start preparing for 2025. And there'll be tentative dates finalized shortly. So keep an eye out for those.
Good, thank you. Mr. Vacy.
I have nothing to report.
You have.
Been around.
Nice holiday. Last year, I guess. No, everything's good. I did check into a couple of your meetings and they were okay, I guess. No, happy to be back in here. Happy to be up and around. So thanks for all the cards and letters and texts and emails and all that stuff. So I appreciate it.
Rodriguez.
I just had one meeting since our last council meeting, and that was with the St. Clair Conservation Authority appeal hearings. There were 2 appeals. Both were from Plympton-Wyoming. Yeah, and both were approved with conditions. So that's that.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy. Just a couple things. First of all, I want to make everybody aware that January is Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. And we always need to be aware of that, and especially for our firefighters. Congratulations to Councilor Rodriguez and new Nana on her special day, her being born on her own day. So that's very unique. Congratulations to you. I had the opportunity to represent our municipality at the Silver Stick Tournament in Petrolia, and this coming Friday night, I'll be in Forest representing us there as well. So that's all that I have, Deputy.
Good, thank you. Well, back.
Okay, let's go to item 7. 7.1. I have a motion by Councilor Vacy, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez, that council remuneration claims for December 2024 be approved for payment. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, let's do the staff reports, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. 8.1. Motion by Councilor Van Claveren, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen. The report by Elizabeth Cummings, Drainage and Engineering Coordinator, dated January the 2nd, 2025, regarding a new schedule of assessment for the repair and the maintenance of the Kernahan O'Donnell Drain be received, and that council appoint M. Garrett's Consulting Incorporated under a section 76 of the Drainage Act to produce a new schedule of maintenance for the Kernahan O'Donnell Drain. Cummings is here if there's any questions. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Go to 8.2. We have a motion by Councilor Rodriguez, seconded by Councilor Vacy, that the report by Elizabeth Cummings, Drainage and Engineering Coordinator, dated January the 2nd, 2025, regarding requests for drainage maintenance for the period of October the 1st, 2024 to December the 31st, 2024 be received for information and filed accordingly. Questions for Ms. Cummings? Seeing none, call for the vote. All those in favor? Great. Item 8.3. Motion by Councilor Rodriguez, seconded by Councilor Bojan. That's the report by Dave Clark. CEMC dated January the 3rd, 2025, regarding the proposed changes to the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act be received. Any comments or concerns of council be provided? Emergency Management Ontario. Mr. Clark is with us today. Mr. Clark, is there anything to add to your report?
Not really. I think most of the information is laid out there. A lot of it's housekeeping. There are key issues that affect municipalities, and I think besides some changing of names of our things, it's no longer going to be an emergency plan. It's now an emergency management plan. But things that are now preconditions for a declaration of an emergency. So really that when you look at that firstly, a head of council cannot declare without calling an emergency control group, activating their plan, getting the control group together and discussing it, and then making a decision to declare, and must satisfy the minister that taking action now on an existing or pending emergency is really time sensitive. So I think the idea there was to try to reduce any political declarations that have gone on. We've seen it happen in some municipalities for political or social reasons when they're not actual under the definition of the act, an emergency. Some of the things in here that may garner attention is the ability for 2 or more municipalities to get together and share a plan. It doesn't apply to the majority of municipalities. That although this hasn't gone through its approval yet in the House, that'll happen after the 23rd of this month. But I think that's aimed at very small municipalities, unincorporated territories, especially in Northern Ontario, where you may only have like 3 municipal staff, period. So that's where they get together to share resources, and that wouldn't really apply here. Right of action. So, and it was implied before, but if after the emergency is done, you may go, whoever caused it, the municipality can go back and sue them for recovery of costs. And it's now written into the act. Another big thing I think is going to be a benefit to all municipalities is the establishment of something called the Ontario Corps. The minister provided a little additional information on that during a press conference a couple of weeks ago. And what they've done is they've gotten together about 10 groups, mostly NGOs, non-governmental organizations like Samaritan's Purse, Salvation Army. There is Team Rubicon, Global Medic, which is a mobile hospital that came in and set up to deal with casualty. Team Rubicon, which is a lot of people that hit the ground, able bodies, chainsaws and everything that'll take care of trees and downed lines, things like that. They can come in, different groups come in with soup kitchens, and social services come into evacuation centers. By putting these 10 groups together, they can be deployed to a municipality if there is a major incident. So if you have a major evacuation, you may set up mobile hospitals, reception centers. In the past, municipalities in their plans say, well, we're going to call the Red Cross. Reality is now the Red Cross is spread very thin, and they could be 3 hours to 3 days away. You need help immediately. And this way, these organizations are approved, trained, and hit the ground running. So I think it's an excellent idea that'll help municipalities. They've already been deployed in some of the forest fires that have gone on in the province, and they'll be deployed during flooding and things like that. So those are the main changes. The province has said that they're opening up to comments by the 23rd, and then it'll go forward. It's been over 20 years since the act came into place. So this is just the act, the changes in the fold for the act, and then there'll be the regulations that come out. The current regulations are regulations 38004, which actually spell out all the responsibilities of a municipality. Has to do to reach annual compliance for the public safety of their citizens, basically having a plan, having a program, being trained, and doing public education. So that'll all be included in the regulations when they come out. But I thought it's important to present this to council to see if anyone had any questions or any comments that I can take back and reflect to the province.
Council, you've had an opportunity to review this. Are there anything that comes forth to mind that you'd like to share with
Actually, I read this more than once, but the one thing that stands out to me that I'm just not so sure I agree with, but who am I? A lot of professionals here. Firstly, the head of council shall not declare an emergency without consulting the emergency management plan. In other words, he must call the control group together and consult before declaring. When you look at the situation that we are here in Wyoming and that train, and what's on that train, and if they went off the rails and you ruptured a car, depending on the wind direction, we have a whole community here that needs to know, like, now, not waiting for, like, a lot of our people live all over the place. They don't live right here in downtown Wyoming. So that time period would be critical, of not declaring an emergency and getting things moving. You gotta call in this whole control group and set up a meeting in the off hours. That can take time.
Through you, your worship, in response, you've outlined my nightmare scenario. And I think a lot of people's, the reality is, and it's currently in the act and it will not change, either the proposed, that a municipality may take action prior to a declaration. So the idea being, when that happens, the staff and the fire department, the municipal staff and all our support staff will go into action immediately and everything's getting done. We will move the people out of there. The reception centers will be set up. You can act without a declaration of an emergency. That does not change. The declaration really is going, and actually you can access outside resources without that declaration. That declaration really puts a major exclamation point on it. So any delay is not there. I think the reason behind this is there have been situations in the past where some heads of council have decided to go their own path and just make a declaration. Only the head of council may declare an emergency, but the head of council, or the premier may terminate one. The idea being they want to make sure people follow the proper steps when you are making that declaration to the province to open up the greater channels. But no, I get your point. There would be no delay. And I can guarantee you the staff, the emergency service personnel and public works that you have at Plympton-Wyoming are ready to act quickly.
Answer your question, Counselor?
Yeah,
Any other questions, comments that you'd like to share with Clark? Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. You'll take that back, Mr. Clark, and proceed ahead. Okay, council, before we get into the bylaws, let's take a 10-minute break, and I ask you to be back in your chair at 6:45. Okay, council, let's go to item 9.1 on your agenda. I have a motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Councillor Wolvett. That bylaw 1 of 2025 being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of $1 million temporary financing and for the town of Plympton-Wyoming be taken as having been read 3 times and finally passed. The mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. And this is a yearly thing that we do, correct, Treasurer? Okay. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you. Just a quick question. How do we come to the 1 million? I know our borrowing power is 4 point or whatever it is.
Yes, so under the municipal act, we need to have a borrowing bylaw of some figure.
Oh.
We've always just did $1 million because we don't plan on doing it.
So, but if you did need more and we only passed a bylaw for $1 million, would you have to then go? You know what I'm saying? Like if our borrowing power is 4,052,000, whatever it is. Shouldn't you just put that in there? Like what happens in that?
So what can we search that?
So are you recommending that you like to see us borrow more?
No, having the allotted amount that we're allowed to borrow available. What I'm stating is if you're, not that you're ever intend on using it, but what if you ever needed it? How does that work is what I'm asking, because we only allotted $1 million, we might need 4 million. And our max allowance is 4,052,000 or something. You know what I'm saying?
Payment limit, that's for our borrowing, it's like 4 million.
Yes. Our limit is more than $1 million.
I know what you're saying, yeah. Treasurer, this is your motions. What would you be comfortable with what we got?
I would go with what we have for now, but I will look into that information.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, your worship, in the interim, the 1 million, definitely should look into it, but be comforted by that we at least have 1 million and we could pass another bylaw if we needed more.
That's what I was
Yeah,
asking. How
yeah.
does it work?
You could pass another
Okay.
one.
All right.
This just gets us like, oh, we need that right now. And then we have a meeting every 2 weeks, we'd be comfortable, but it's good for Norma, I guess, to look into the options. Yeah.
Not that we'll ever use any of it, so it doesn't matter.
That's why we passed it, so we.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody clear on that motion? All those in favor? Carried. Let's go to item 9.2. Motion by Councillor Bojan, seconded by Councillor Rodriguez, that bylaw 5 of 2025 being a bylaw to authorize execution of an agreement with His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, the town of Plympton, Wyoming, be taken as read 3 times and finally passed. The mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Mr. Sabansky.
Steve Davidson like to pass his regrets. He's involved in the fire in Petrolia. So he's not able to attend the meeting tonight. The bylaw before you tonight is an agreement with the provincial government in regards to funds obtained for cancer prevention for the firefighters. It is the intent of the fire department to use these funds to buy and install extractors at the Kimlaki Hole. There'll need to be plumbing modifications to do that. We don't believe this will cover the full amount, but it goes a long way to help with that expense.
Okay. Councillor Rodriguez.
So the plumbing modifications, I didn't have time to, busy being a nana. But back when we talked about it with the showers, because we keep trying to get these showers done, and they keep not getting done. Will these plumbing modifications help that situation?
With my conversation with the chief, it's my understanding as he has not had the opportunity to have contractors come out and re-review the situation, that we're not ready to commit to exactly what. Because the previous chief had sent the department down a certain path. We want to bring in other contractors to review how best to accommodate the situation and possibly see if we can do it in a more cost-effective manner than what was necessarily initially. So We know we're gonna put it to prevention. We know it'll include extractors, possibly showers, possibly plumbing. To what extent and where in Kamlaki is yet to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Vacy?
Yes, did we not just do a bunch of work out there in plumbing?
Without getting into significant details,
Ago?
there was some work done to the drains out there 2 years ago for other purposes, yes.
Out to the truck drains, that's what it was. Thank you.
Deputy?
Yeah, that fifth line on that first page, it doesn't make any sense to me. Can somebody explain it?
First page.
Of the agreement?
Which?
That's fifth line, as represented by the entered the full legal title of the minister. It's just very poor English. I'd just like to.
Fortunately, this is a provincial agreement, so amending it is not necessarily
Okay, so on page
able to
2,
do so.
under B4, 5B, it's not prerequisites, it's perquisites. You know,
Okay. We noted.
yeah, so just straighten that out a little bit if it can be done. It doesn't read right.
Busy up there.
I bet you.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. 9.3, moved by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Van Claveren. Bylaw 6, 2025, being a bylaw to appoint a fire chief for the Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department, be taken as read 3 times, finally passed, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, clerk, item number 10, any correspondence that's come our way since the preparation of this agenda? Okay, let's go to 11.1, moved by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Van Claveren. That correspondence items A to H relating to the recommended reading and routine approval and information items be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Council, filed accordingly. That's A to H, beginning on my left. Councillor Wolvett, anything from you?
Think of the one on G with kindergarten, supporting them on their tax. If anybody read that, but you know, it's, I kind of related to how we're dealing with the railroad here. Years ago, they made these agreements that these hydro establishments wouldn't have to pay big property taxes to the municipality, but a lot of years have gone by and they're still dated by 20 years, not paying them. So the taxpayers are paying the big share of it. So I kind of support them and what they're talking about based on what we're trying to deal with. So I would support G.
Would you like to have that pulled out with our support?
I would, yes.
Anything else from you, Councillor? No. Okay, Councillor Van Claveren?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull out H, resolution from the town of Cobalt, improvements to catch and release. Super straightforward letter, and would certainly recommend that we support.
Okay, anything else from you?
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay, Deputy?
No, disagree with Mr. Van Claveren.
Okay.
Don't be surprised.
Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you. Also, with item G, I would just like to note that's Bruce Nuclear that they're speaking of. Is that correct? I would just like to say in general, does put a lot of money back into that community. It's a little bit different than our railroad because we don't get any money back from them and benefit. But item F on bridge gas, the natural gas policy statement consultation. So I believe Mr. Sabansky, we had provided comment on that during the process, and so looks like we have a new representative who's gonna follow up with us on what the results were. So I just wanted to note it, not necessarily.
Just, okay, you do. Noted, okay. Anything else, Councillor?
No.
Counselor Vacy?
Yes, thank you. Just, D. I'm sure everybody had read that one where they're looking at being able to take somebody off council, which makes total sense to me. You have somebody sitting here with criminal record and whatnot and no way of getting them off. So, yeah, that's all I have. Everything else was taken. All the good ones were taken already. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Bojan?
Nothing further for me. Thank you.
If I could just draw council's attention, while the clerk's drafting that motion to, item B. Just to make council aware, the Creative County grant, selections came out and we were not successful in the, banner program. So, to let you guys know that, the full amount was budgeted for, so we'll be talking about the program again when budget deliberations come up. But we won't have the grant funding to put towards the program this year. Just a FYI.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk.
Well, that's been amended to F because G and A.
Okay, so I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Hugh and seconded by Counselor Van Claveren that correspondence items A to F leading to recommended reading and routine approval and information items be noted as received by Plympton-Wyoming Council and filed accordingly. All those in favor? Okay, do I have a seconder for Counselor Wolvet's motion to pull G from Cardin? Counselor Van Claveren? Motion by Counselor Wolvet, seconded by Counselor Van Claveren. The council supports correspondence item G. Municipality of Kincardine regarding property taxation implications. All those in favor? It's carried. And moved by Counselor Van Claveren, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen. The council support correspondence item H from the town of Cobalt regarding the improvements to the catch and release program. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, new business. Counselor Bojan, anything from you?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Counselor Vacy?
Not really new business, but the Christmas in the Village, I did manage to sneak up and catch it from a totally different viewpoint, which I thought was fantastic. The crowd was unbelievable. The tractors, everything. So very well done. That's all. Santa did a great job as usual.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was cold that night.
It was cold that night. Trust me, it was really cold.
Okay, Counselor Rodriguez.
So,
Yes, thank you. So somebody had sparked my fire again. Thank you, Counselor Van Claveren. Regarding the lack of updated wireless communication infrastructure. And, you know, we're obviously nowhere further ahead than a resolution that went nowhere. So I did reach out to MP Gladew's office and MP Bob Bailey's office today. When I look at what a highly politically charged topic in today's environment is the border. And the entire jurisdiction of Lambton County, but the United States. And yet we have the worst wireless communications line, which are a piece of critical infrastructure when they're looking to spend so much money investing in border security. So I reached out to MP Gladew's office to see how much money was actually allocated in the 1.3 or 4 billion they were going to spend for critical infrastructure. I mean, Plympton-Wyoming is no different. We're abutting Lake Huron. I mean, if you want a front row seat, it's kind of some interesting things out there. So we got big loopholes here. And we've got massive shortage of needed infrastructure. So if they're gonna invest, this is a good time to get those funds allocated, if not for the people, do it for security. But the fact that the federal government is currently prorogued, we have a resignation of a prime minister, the board government, stated that they were going to, and because those funds have not been approved to get released for improving security, the Ford government has stated that they're looking at the OPP resources. They're not gonna wait for the federal government. So they're gonna use OPP resources, in some capacity because there is federal and provincial jurisdictional differences. But again, there'll be obviously money allocated for resources to increase the OPP. It's kind of concerning how that's gonna work, but so that's why I put the call into Mr. Bailey to see if also include the fact that you need some critical infrastructure upgrades to your budget for those resources. And if all else fails, I'm calling the federal ombudsman and the CRTC to get some movement there. And well, hopefully with Gladu as well, I can get some sort of contact with the ISCD, who is the controlling body for these cell towers and applies the regulations, which I had mentioned in the resolution that you have 3 years to get those towers up once they're municipally approved. So on the fact that nothing's happening, and not just here, in other jurisdictions in Lambton County, I think that conversation is important. So thank you.
Thank you. Deputy,
No.
Councilor Van Clavert,
Nothing for me, sir.
Councilor Willett.
Yeah, I was approached the other day by an individual who does run a Airbnb or short-term rental. Question was asked, a couple of questions was asked. And one was about tiny homes. Are tiny homes allowed in piece of residential property in Plympton-Wyoming? I said we had had some discussions on it, but I did not know the answer to that. And whether there have to be rezoning done. I did not have the answer to that. Said I'd bring it up at council. Maybe we can get some answers on tiny homes. And the same discussion and the same question was about having 3 different residences on your property. Because, you know, we concentrate in our efforts on short-term rentals, and here we are, our own provincial government said you can have 3 residences on there. Same question. Do you have to rezone your whole property in order to have 3 residents? Have to rezone your own property to have a tiny home? I don't know the formal answer. That's why I'm making it official here for us, because it may make a difference to some of these short-term rental people, what they're gonna do or what they're not gonna do, or what they call their rentals. So we can get an answer to that. Because it's interesting to know what you'd have to do to, like, they got these tiny homes on wheels now. You need to back them into your backyard, hook it into your sewer and hydro, and away you go, I guess. I don't know. So we can get some answers on that from.
So I won't be able to get into a lot of detail. It's a planning question and our planners obviously are not here with us
Yeah,
tonight.
no, it's.
But as per the provincial legislation, as of right, in any urban residential zone, a person can have 2 accessory or up to 3 dwelling units. That includes up to 1 accessory dwelling or unit outside the existing home. So if you had a home which you could divide into 2, and then you could still build a tiny home in the backyard and meet the provincial legislation. It is by provincial law permitted in the residential zone. So if they're in a residential zone, could do so. We are obviously in the early process of developing our bylaw. Staff are working away at that, and we anticipate that will come forward to council in the coming months for your review, and then decisions whether you want to go to public consultation and what the bylaw from there before it's passed. But that property owners, their best option would be to contact our planning staff so they can get a thorough understanding of what is and what isn't allowed.
Whether to send them to planning or send them to the county building inspector or whatever. So it's an interesting discussion though. You know, especially we talked about that people in our residential neighborhoods complaining about short-term rentals, but you really know now that that same neighbor can have 3 residents on there with parking and all the stuff that we talked about in short-term rentals. I don't know. didn't really have any rules around it. So you got 3 residences. What about parking? What about partying? What about all the above? So it was an interesting question. I didn't have the answer.
So you're okay, Counselor, if Mr. Spansky takes it back to planning?
Yeah, and if we're gonna come back with a bylaw, I guess the other question would be, can we restrict? Say, no, you can just have one, no, we can't,
Unfortunately, I don't believe we're allowed to restrict. We have to meet the provincial.
because it's a provincial. Okay,
Clerk?
If I may, your worship, just provide a little bit of clarification. So there are 2 different things that do cross. So if you go back to our last planning agenda, there's a good presentation and you can refer to those individuals that asked you questions that has information about ARUs or additional dwelling units. So that's a lot of good information. And as Adam said, staff will be bringing a bylaw where council gets to review that. There is the rules from the minister, but there will be a bylaw at this level. Aside from that, we have our short-term rental licensing bylaw. And in that, there is language that would speak to how many units that are on a property that are allowed to be rented out. So that's a part of your enforcement in your licensing bylaw. So they're 2 separate things, but they could apply to the same property, additional dwelling units. So that's something to consider. I believe, Ella, what do we have in there? One per
One per premises,
premises
as the bylaw is written right now.
for short-term rentals.
short term.
Yeah, premises being like a property. So if I had a house with my unit in it, a second unit within the house, and then a 3rd unit in the backyard, I could pick one of the 3 to be a short-term rental. I couldn't rent out 2 of the excess ones as short-term rentals as the bylaw stands today.
So that's proposed in the licensing bylaw that you guys have reviewed and we'll be coming back to you shortly.
Just back up there, kind of. So you could have 2 residents and the 3rd could be a short-term rental?
Correct. If you were to do upwards of 3
Yeah.
ADUs on your property, then you could rent out one of them as a short-term rental, one as a long-term rental and live in the other, or whatever situation.
In that situation, you would have to register then as a short-term.
Correct.
rental.
And you'd be under the rules and the rules will be whatever the rules are in place when council approves the bylaw.
Okay, I'm not so sure that people in these residential neighborhoods realize. I don't know how much is gonna happen, maybe not at all up to Wyoming, but people need to realize. 3 of them in that same house that you were complaining about, so that's what this person was kind of implying that, oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Quick comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I think you'll see it wouldn't surprise me if you see the short-term rentals fade into the background.
Yeah.
If any of these projects start to surface, and I have to believe that folks that are already existing landlords are gonna want to sweeten the pot on existing properties they have. And then, so then it's not just parking for a weekend with multiple cars, it's every day. And then where do the pets come in? And then where do the conflicts between residences on the same short-term rental, people pray they come back.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And the parking is a good note because part of that legislation is that we are going to, as part of our zoning bylaw amendment, as of minimum parking goes from 1.5 per dwelling unit to 1 per dwelling unit. So they only are required to provide 1 parking spot per dwelling unit.
That's all I have, sir.
Conflicts with our parking bylaw. But again, we can get in much more detail at planning with the planners if you like.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that takes us to item 13. 13.1A. I have a motion by Councilor Wilbett, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen. The council move into an in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act of 2001. It's amended for the following reasons. Item A and B, personal matters. Section 239, bracket 2, bracket B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Item C, third-party confidential information. Item 239, bracket 2, bracket 1, information that's been supplied in confidence by a third party. Council, all those in favor? Carried. For those that are joining with us virtually, thank you very much for being with us this evening. We're now going in camera.